get them off the streets. Obviously, they would be carriers if other people are near them.
It's absolutely correct to look at the impact of the crisis right now, the COVID-19 crisis, in light of the problems, that the deep social problems that pre-existed before this pandemic. And when you were there, yes, absolutely, there has been a raging homelessness crisis, which has only gotten exacerbated since you were here, for the simple reason is that, as you said, when rents are skyrocketing, you have a continuous pipeline towards homelessness. So not only are the services for those who are homeless right now completely...
Okay, so the homeless, they're not getting coronavirus from people walking around on the streets around them. They're getting coronavirus by going into soup kitchens. The thing about being poor is you are continuously being herded into dense situations, right? So, because in order to get what you need to live, the rich force you to jump through all kinds of hoops. So, you would think that a homeless person would kind of have it made, right? That they would just be able to hang out all day and just kind of not do anything. Well, the opposite is true. And poor people in general, the opposite is true. And I know, because I have put myself in the situation of, the most poor and lived it. And I can tell you that you spend more time trying to get benefits and making phone calls and doing everything that you have to do to survive than a person who works for a living. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I hate to say this, but the people who you deal with on a daily basis, they are trying to frustrate you, so they take up 10 times as much time as it would take. So every little thing becomes 10 times as long. If you call up and tell them, well, you made 200, you're being honest, right? Oh, I made $250 last month off of something. Maybe I sold something or something. By the way, selling something, I don't think the money that comes from that should be considered income, because you also lost something, right? So if I have a nice guitar because I'm a musician and I sell it because I don't have any food, really, is that really income? I mean, it just seems a little Machiavellian to do that to people.
This is a classic case of the old do as I say, not as I do. Professor Neil Ferguson is an epidemiologist who led the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies at Imperial College London. They are responsible for advising the British government in the event of emergencies. And it was their research that claimed that more than 500,000 people in the UK would die unless the country went under strict lockdown. Professor Ferguson has also been very public about endorsing lockdowns, going on TV every chance he got to tell everyone. And they must social distance. It is imperative for us to stay home, alone, locked in our houses, he insisted in his refined British accent, or else we will kill all our loved ones. And because of his outspokenness and his influential position, he was absolutely instrumental in Boris Johnson's decision to reverse course on their herd immunity strategy.
Okay, so we already know that people with money are hypocrites, right? They tell us that we have to tighten our belt while they're making 100, 200, 300 million dollars a year, right? And by the way, I would consider anybody making over 100,000 to be a rich person. I mean, if you try and survive on no money like I do, then for sure you would consider somebody. I mean, give me $100,000 a year. See what I'd do with it. God, maybe I'd even be able to start a business that made a lot of money or something. But anyway, so we know they're hypocrites. I mean, remember the Republican guy who was head of the anti-gay, like the marriage family council or whatever it was. It was the one that was, responsible for raising money and promoting conservative values. Maybe it was called conservative values, I don't know. Anyway, he was an important person, and he was caught going to gay bars and picking up on gay gigolos or whatever, prostitutes. I mean, we know that, and I'm not saying don't report it. Do report it. I enjoyed this piece, but I am saying that we all, well, maybe we don't all know about it. So maybe she should be. I don't know what her listeners are like, how intelligent they are. I'm a victim of being too intelligent when it comes to news, because for 40 years, since I was 2 years old, actually, I've been constantly watching the news. My dad used to watch the news about Vietnam because he was all gung-ho, beat the Vietnamese. And of course, I think I didn't like it because I would cry and he would get mad at me, and I'm sure he hit me a few times, even at 2 years old. I know he got caught spanking me at 6.5 weeks. My mom was furious anyway, so I would cry until he picked me up and set me on his knee. So obviously I was watching the news from a very early age, and maybe I shouldn't assume, I know I shouldn't assume that everybody knows history the way I know history. I do study history, by the way. I still go on YouTube and watch all the history channels and stuff like that. But from 1970 on, anyway, I was an avid news watcher. So, and of course now I'm a journalist and I know everything about the stuff like I'm going to show you now. So I know all about conservatives, they're pedophiles. I'm not saying every single one of them, but they have a huge pedophile problem. They've had pedophile sex rings, professional, where they go and pay. In Washington, D.C., the Republicans had Larry King, the black guy who had a pedophile ring, and of course they managed to get him in all of his videotapes. And I don't know, they're probably ashes in a landfill now. Just like Dick Cheney. I mean, do you really think that his closet full of videotapes of torture and I can't prove that, so we'll say alleged torture, whatever. But why would he burn them? Why would he start a fire right there? And I don't know where it was, in the Capitol, I think, or was it in the White House? I don't know. But he burned an entire closet full of videotapes. That we do know. who knows what else was in there, right? So we know they're hypocrites. And I'm not criticizing her because she's, to me, beating a dead horse. I'm backing her up. I mean, there's just so much evidence that they have a history, and it's obvious from that history that they have a problem, right? That they're worse than us. You know, the typical average poor person or just people in general isn't a pedophile. I mean, they are very far and few between. They're usually very disturbed people who had a bad life in the beginning. But people aren't generally as crooked. So why rich people? Well, because money corrupts. Because you can feed all your worst desires, I guess, with money. I mean, if I went down to, any city has its area where there's hookers and blow, meth, whatever. I could probably screw 20 girls a day, right? I have no doubt I could just pick up girl after girl after girl. And likely never get caught. Because the cops really aren't out there that much. So, yeah, money, corruption, it all fits together.
During a recent interview with Megyn Kelly, Tara Reid discusses what she would like Joe Biden to do. Watch.
Let's talk about what he said. Because he went on TV last Friday and said, first of all, it never happened. Period, end of report. This did not happen. He did say that in his view, accusers should start off with the presumption that they're telling the truth. Do you think he's afforded you that presumption?
No. I mean, it's been stunning, actually, how some of his surrogates with the blue checks, that are his surrogates, have been saying really horrible things about me and to me on social media. He hasn't himself, but there's a measure of hypocrisy with the campaign saying it's safe. It's not been safe. All my social media has been hacked. All my personal information has been dragged through. Every person that maybe has a gripe against me, an ex-boyfriend or an ex-landlord or whatever it is, has been able to have a platform rather than me. Talking about things that have nothing to do with 1993, like even the whole thing with being called a Russian agent, that in particular, that incites people. People actually, I got a death threat from that because they thought I was being a...
And I want to thank Megyn Kelly for being the first mainstream media person to interview her. It's disgusting what's going on. Or maybe they had her on Morning Joe, but Morning Joe's just another surrogate for, the establishment. Megyn Kelly's, because she was a victim of sexual harassment at Fox News, she's the first one to give her a platform, as she said. And I doubt anybody, I hope it goes viral, because America needs to see it. Establishment Democrats need to understand that, like I said in the last segment, money corrupts. And that's their problem, is they're all about the money. By the way, on Facebook, I have started, I didn't start it, but I'm the first person to promote it. But other people have started Progressive Party so here's Kentuckians for the Progressive Party. That's my group. and it was for Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders is too weak. Yes, he doesn't take money directly, and neither did Obama when he ran. That was his big draw. But he's backing the party that does. So he doesn't work anymore. He doesn't work for us. And this is my group. But look, here's other groups. And they've changed their name to the Progressive Party. This was the Progressive Bull Moose Party. And they're popping up all over the place, aren't they? So this is a great thing. And I imagine we will all work together to get a progressive party. For now, I would say push for the Green Party to make Jesse Ventura and their candidate, and I think he will beat Trump and Biden, no problem. I think he'll destroy them as the Green Party. And at some point, I hope to get the Progressive Party going for real. We'll have a PNC, Progressive National Committee, and we'll do our own fundraising. And no, I don't believe in not accepting money from the bigger people. The bigger people just have to be absolutely dedicated to the progressive cause. So if you're, I don't know, Greenpeace, who are the big people who would be dedicated to the progressive cause? It certainly wouldn't be an Exxon. So obviously those people would be, the oil industry, gas industry, the big pharma, big agriculture, all those would be off the table. I don't know. I hope that someday we can say that the biggest corporations in the United States are progressive, and that we can take their money. I think the most important thing would be that the Progressive Party have a very great charter or constitution, and that it be vigorously enforced from within and outside the party, as in the party would hire people who just want to find things bad, not progressive about the party. Anyway, there's always ways to do things. Just straightening that out. Tara, I believe you. I mean, you're a little chubby now, but you were absolutely... And I can see how every man would be attracted to you. And a slime ball like Joe Biden, who's Mr. Macho Man, he was just waiting for it. I mean, he set you up. He had, by the way, Tara, who asked you to give him that satchel or whatever, gym bag, and what she had to say about it? I'm gonna have to look into that, because I'd like to know who all these people were around you, and I'd like to investigate them thoroughly and pressure them. Maybe pressure them with different types of prosecution to talk. I mean, it's amazing how the establishment can run roughshod over everybody who says something against them. But we the people can't get any kind of movement on anything. we can't get any kind of pressure.
You're telling me you're 100% certain that CBS News Corporation, National, staged a fake event. They faked the news, they faked the reality, and broadcasted that to all of their audience last Friday on CBS This Morning.
Okay, so anyway, the master's report is usually pretty weak, but they did ferret out this one report, and it proves that CBS padded the line. It's the line of cars going through being tested with with the people at, I think, Cherry something, a hospital or something, who's nonprofit, and they're, money again. Money corrupts. These nonprofits, they can get really greedy. As a matter of fact, I've done some pieces, I don't know when, maybe I haven't, I've thought a lot about it, about how, hey, these nonprofits are the biggest fucking money makers, they're all greedy and stuff. I mean, I looked at the CEOs of, like, Salvation Army and a number of other charities. I've always been interested in the Red Cross because they've been heavily used, and this is well known as fronts for CIA, and so since you know that, then you have to wonder about countries who say they're using, the AIDS as a way to actually inflict different types of things upon different countries, and these people get very upset, and they, and then you get groups like Al Qaeda, and who knows where, in Mali or wherever, who absolutely attack, with guns and stuff. And then they turn on good NGOs, right? So regular NGOs, Doctors Without Borders or whatever, I don't know that they're clean either. Because the intelligence agencies seem to be able to get into all of them. And how do I know this? Because my own father was one. I can't tell you for sure how early the intelligence community took an interest in him, but he was in the Army, and he was top secret and all that kind of stuff because he handled nuclear weapons. But then he got into a situation where he was working for our best friends, because my mom's best friend, Doris, what was her last name? Anyway, she married a Song Khashoggi, so my dad was over there, and I think that the intelligence community had already taken interest in him, either because he was working with the monarchy in Saudi Arabia, selling them furniture, building them castles or whatever, palaces, or maybe they actually were working with Assam. I mean, Assam's older brother Adnan was one who was dealing, arms dealing, F-16s and everything to Saudi Arabia, which now are bombing Yemen, of course. So, and Assam was in the front row at Nixon's funeral, or Adnan was. So they probably took an interest in him immediately. They may have maneuvered the whole thing. Seems likely, right? Anyway, so I'm very familiar with how they work. So when the furniture factory shut down in Beirut, then all of a sudden he gets a job with Singer as like a regional manager, you know, for the Middle East. And my dad was pretty smart, but he wasn't that smart. He didn't have any kind of education. And Singer Sewing Machines builds multiple re-entry vehicles and all that kind of stuff. So it's obvious, and plus he told me in his own way. He told me that I was bugging him, and he said, well, where do you think all those reports that I wrote went to? And I still have the pictures. You know, he used to run around the Middle East taking pictures of everything, and that's how it works. You know, like the Mission Impossible, in the very first one, where they're trying to capture the list. Well, that's a real list. That's a list of people who are just sales managers, this and that, all around the world. But they're actually going a little beyond their job when they make their reports, and their reports are going to intelligence. I mean, look at the CIA white papers. If you go to the CIA site and look at the white papers, those are just people out in the field making reports like you'd write a report on a country, you know, like a Wikipedia entry on, you know, Muscat or Oman. Well, those, matter of fact, I should check because, well, I don't have the reports that my dad made. And that's kind of odd that he didn't keep copies of his own reports when he worked for Singer. I might have to look into that. Maybe they're around here somewhere. But they might be word for word what you find in CIA white papers on different countries in the Middle East. Of course, then he went to Saudi Arabia, or not Saudi Arabia, he was there in Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, where, you know, the whole big story. I've told it at least a few times on this program. I ask you to go back in the programs and watch them if you want to get that information. But anyway, so I know how this, you know, this stuff works, and the Masters report. So, you know, so back to the story, he's got this one thing where, who knows, producers or whatever made a mistake and trying to make the story better. And what I was trying to get at was, there's money involved, right? Sensationalizing news, because this is news. When you go in and you try and convince people that what you're showing is reality of the coronavirus, and then you might even get into some crimes, because if you try to mislead people, then, you know, there's probably criminal activity. It's probably criminal activity to do that as a news person. And I don't know what the ramifications as far as the virus goes might be. You know, people might die because of your information. But for John Masters to insinuate that
that's the guy right there. He's feeling sorry for
that
himself.
this is going on all over the United States, and the figures are incorrect. I mean, as far as I know, well, you know, people bring up a lot of stuff, so it gets real complicated. But they say, like, well, doctors diagnose somebody as coronavirus without testing them, and they go on the list. So, are the numbers correct? We'll never know in the United States, right? because nobody's going out of their way to really make sure that the numbers are correct. You know, a lot of people like to flout this number of, oh, well, we did antibody tests on a bunch of people and they've already had it. And therefore the death rate is much lower because those people aren't counted as infected. Well, we don't know for sure about the antibody test. But what I do know is that flus have been going around, you know, forever. And that the people coming in with flu into the hospital aren't dying like they would die of the normal flu. They say, well, you know, the old flus didn't. Well, SARS and MERS and all these things, they are different. They are killing more people who catch it. You ought to be afraid of catching SARS and MERS. I mean, I can tell you that when I first ran into this, because I catch everything that goes around, I was amazed. I don't know, sometime after 2000, I caught something in like January 1st, just say and I was sick for like a whole month, and I didn't take any antibiotics, right? Was that COVID? Was it SARS-1 or SARS-2? It was an unusual experience over getting flus in the past. And I'm not going to say flus in the past weren't nasty. I mean, I did get a lot of them. And I remember my dad used to complain because I'd be off for a week instead of, you know, when he was growing up, oh, you caught the cold. And you had a cold for 2 or 3 days and you were back at work. And so he used to bitch about that. But then I caught that and I was sick for a month. And I finally got over it. And I didn't want to go to the doctor because I wanted to get over it on my own. But then later in February, let's say, because I'm just going by what I remember. It wasn't February, it wasn't, I don't know. But I caught what seemed like it again. And I mean, it was so bad that I took my bed and I put it up on my guitar so that I would lie at an angle so that the liquid would flow out of my lungs and not bunch up in my lungs. I don't know if that was really a good idea. It was just an idea, and I did it. And I didn't do it for about a couple of days because it just was impossible to stay in bed. You just slide down the back of your bed. I really would have needed something to hold my feet at the top of the bed in order to do it, but I didn't think of that. So anyway, so you get this like, I got it again. Or another one in February, and after about 3 weeks I was like, God damn, man, this has got to be the same thing, or maybe I have a lung condition, I don't know. See, that's the thing, it gets so fucking complicated. How can you keep track of all these different possible things, right? So I went into a urgent treatment center. I'm sure you're familiar with them. And I had heard about this using. So you get an antibiotic, but then on top of that you get, I don't know if it's hormones. It might be some kind of, anyway, it was a thing on top of and it really did take care of it. Maybe we should be thinking about that for this virus. And by the way, anybody who doesn't think this virus is bad, the fact is that we're getting, and unless it's just scare tactics, we're getting all these reports of people. This doesn't stop at your lungs, right? Of course, when it goes to your I don't know what pneumonia is anymore. I always thought it went to your brain, up your spine, or something like that. But this is getting into all your organs. This is attacking your heart, attacking heart muscles. I may even have a video in here about that. So, and who's to say, right? Who's to say that the old ones didn't attack, get out all through your body? I don't know. I don't pretend to know. But I sure am interested. And I stay interested. So anyway, let's see what else we got.
So Donald Trump's team released an ad that just absolutely torches Joe Biden and the Democrats and their Me Too and Time's Up hypocrisy.
Yeah, I agree, man. Biden's toast. He's never going to be able to stand up to the massive money and machine that is the Republican attack machine for presidency for 2020. There's no fucking way. I mean, even if he'd been squeaky clean, sneaky clean is actually more appropriate. It's amazing how a faux pas can be a better. So, yeah, and if he doesn't get destroyed, what does that say about establishment Democrats? But they've got a person who could be so easily destroyed, but they managed to get their crook in instead of, and I don't think they will, because I think this revolving door bullshit of establishment Democrats, establishment Republicans is just predictable. 8 years of a Republican, 8 years of a Democrat, 8 years of a Republican, 8 years of a Democrat. And after a while, the names, Clintons, Bushes, the only thing that keeps them out is the 2-term limit. I mean, thank God for that, right? Otherwise, this country would be a total dictatorship, at least in terms of its presidency.
I got that here, folding a rocket stove. Let's see what it's all about. This is pretty new. I haven't seen it before.
This guy, all he does is advertise for Amazon, but I thought this was pretty cool.
Could be not so new, but anyways, new for me. So you got all the pieces. It's pretty hefty, and there is a simple instructions. Yep.
So it's pretty easy
so that
to
way
put
you can
together.
Put on top of.
And
you can put it too like that. Or since it's a 5-starter, I'm gonna throw it over. Okay, and we have good fire going. A little bit coming out from the side, but for the most part, it's highly ventilated from down here. Look how.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty cool little rocket stove, but you know what? You can simply and I want to say something here about poor people. Generally speaking, they are so cool. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to look at a couple of things here. So, how about coffee can rocket stove? Now, I'm not going to look at all these people who come up with all this stupid shit to capitalize on it. Matter of fact, the rocket stove people have taken over. Let's just cut it down to coffee can stove. And we want to look for the ones here.
All right, this is hey Colin. Hey. All right, this is the wood stove.
And this isn't even one of them. But there's plenty of poor people who at least were poor. And now they want to show people how they survived. Uh-huh. Here we go. So let's watch this. And they're so much cooler than people who are on YouTube trying to impress me.
Welcome to Uncle Milo Explains number 4. This episode is about how to make a hobo stove. Now, a hobo stove is an old tin can with holes in it so that you can make a fire in it. You have to start with a number 10 can, and that's a large can like this. Size is important. Any size smaller is going to be too small to sustain a fire for a reasonable amount of time. Another one, what I generally do is I go over to the local Italian restaurant, and I get the tomato soup can, the tomato paste can. I just ask permission to go into their recycling bin. Went into the recycling bin and got a lot of them. Unfortunately, this one needs to be cleaned. Be right back. I'm going to have to go and clean this up. Another type of can I like to use, these are all the same size, as you can see, all number 10s. Sometimes they come a little higher, a little lower. That's okay. It's the width, the diameter of the fire that's going to make a difference to keep it going. There's a stove on the market now called the BioLite, and it burns wood and creates electricity. Well, that's got a blower on it. The BioLite is a little bit smaller. With a blower, it'll keep the fire going. Without a blower, you need to use natural ventilation, and the fire's got to be that large to stay going for a long time. Another type of can I like to use is this. This is a coffee can. Coffee can, now this label has already come off, but the coffee can has this little extra rim around the top, which is very useful. One comment about the label.
By the way, you see what I just did? Please subscribe to my channel. You might have to look for it because in the playlist it's hard to find. Make sure that you've got my name of Progressive News down here, so you're going to have to find my Progressive News channel and subscribe. I've never taken any money and I don't plan to, so I'm pure.
Labels are a problem if you leave them on, so you got to take them off. But some cans actually come with paint on the cans. If the paint's on the can, you just leave it, and it'll burn right off. The paint will burn off the first time you use it. That's fine. There are 3 basic tools that I use. I use a old-fashioned American-made can opener. It's important to use an American-made can opener. I'm going to show you in a moment why you don't use one of these new Chinese-made can openers. I use a pair of pliers, needle nose, long nose, but it has to be nice and wide. I'm going to use this to make some final adjustments. And I have, now this is again an old American-made tool, and the reason why I use this is for the sharp point. You can use a drill bit. There's a little bit of extra that I add, a little bit of secret sauce that makes this a very usable stove, and that's what this is for. Now, using technically, again, you can just use these 2 tools. Take off the label. All right. So now we have the plain can ready to go. What I do is I need to be able to, when I use it, this is again one of my little extras that really helps a lot when I really get it going. Sometimes you need to know where you've put your tinder. This is an example, a fully loaded stove. I need to know where the seam is. Now on this one I did not mark the seam. The seam is right here, and I think, nope, yeah, that's okay. The seam is right here, and that's where I put my tinder inside, so when I light this fire, this thing will go up all just with one match. Problem is, I don't really know where it is, so I've come up with a design. This is some sort of a preliminary design. I'm still learning how to make them. I find this seam. This seam will sort of disappear once you use it a lot. It'll turn to rust. So what I do is I take and I just put a couple of holes. There's other ways you could mark it, but basically I just want to make a mark here and here. I can now tell. Oh, that's got to be straightened out. See, that's why I use pliers. Okay, straighten that out a bit. Okay, now I have a mark top and bottom that tells me where to start. If I'm going to start a fire, I'm going to put the tinder in the corner. That's just very useful. Next, I don't want to put a lot of stuff on the top. I do the top first, but when I do it en masse, I'm going to show you the basic design. The simplest design is simply to take this can opener and just go down. Now, very carefully space them. You don't want to, if you put them too close together, it'll literally punch the bottom of the can right off. So you need to put a space between each hole. You get anywhere from 18 to 20 holes this way if you space them close but not touching, and then just go completely around. Last part, yeah, sometimes if you don't have enough room, if putting something here would be a problem, then you won't put it in, but I've got just enough room to put that in there, and there we go. Alright, that's your basic hobo stove design. This will work, but I'm going to have to add some stuff. Like I added these two little things to show me where the seam was. I'm going to add some more stuff to make it actually usable. Now I'm going to do the top. Now the top is a bit of a problem. That's why I use these. I'm going to have to show you how to do it. It's not a fun part, but it has to be done because otherwise it's too easy to smother. If you have a closed top like this, put something on top, smothers the flame. I need to add holes around the outside to let it breathe, and also so I can use it upside down, which is useful in bad weather. So I'm going to start here. I've discovered the best way to do it is I just start here and here, both sides here. I just put one on each. Now notice I can only do a little bit. And here is a nasty piece of wicked metal. I'm going to deal with that later. Then I go on the other side. I just put that down, go up on top, do one there, turn it sideways, put one on top, turn it sideways again, the other side, one on the bottom, and then add one extra between each hole all around the top. I should end up with basically 9 holes. Alright, next I start at the seam, and I'm going to do a straightening pass. I straighten it like this, straightening it up. It takes basically 4 times I have to go around. And what I'm doing is I'm getting this metal out of the way. Okay, now I start at the seam again. I come in like this. I want to just I come in at a different angle. I'm trying to make this come in so that it's going to be closer, and I'll show you how I make it wrap around. Okay, then the next part is coming in like this. I have to, in effect, start wrapping it around, so I pull it like this. I want to make sure the point goes outside where I'm going to actually wrap it in the last step. Last step, I go in from the back side and I wrap it right around like that. Now this is where that point gets pushed right around where you don't see it anymore. It's going to actually be in a safe position. Sometimes if you've got a can opener that gives you a great big hole, you can end up with it wrapping all the way around. But anyways, the whole idea is it gets it up out of the way and keeps it out of trouble. Can opener, piercing style, distributed by Convenience Valet, made in China. C Valet, this may have been picked up. Anyways, picked up in the store. These are what are sold in stores nowadays. This is a shame. This is a shame to China. It's a shame for the American company that sells it. They should be ashamed of themselves. I think it was a local store. I don't remember which one. I don't want to name it by name, but there's no reinforcement. Echo patented this can opener. I don't think this was patented at all. This was properly hardened. This, I'm going to open right up. Let's see how long this lasts. 1. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay, that bent a little bit. 2. Oh dear. And that's it. That's all she wrote. Thank you, China, for such cheap merchandise. It's junk. Absolute junk. Don't buy Chinese stuff. Go to a thrift store. Go to the Salvation Army. Look for something old. American made. Made in USA. These will work. Good tools. Put them in a safe place. Don't lose them. They'll last a lifetime. I actually took the diamond hone. Yes, the diamond hone was made in China. Where else are you going to go? But I honed this edge, make it nice and sharp. I took a magnifying glass and verified I had a nice sharp edge. That sharp edge works like a charm. The metal is hardened and it does not deflect. It works great. So, make sure you always have an American-made hardened steel can opener when you're going to do it. Buy the cheap Chinese one, it's not going to work. Now, the final thing. This is, again, one of my secret sauce type of things. But use this a lot. Use these. They work great. The problem that I have is use them. You start burning great. You get a great fire. About half an hour later, everything's burned down, and you get ash right down. Begins to clog these holes. Now, you are going to have to blow it out. Okay, you can stick a stick in it, whatever you're going to do. But the problem is, they will completely clog up and the fire will go out. My solution is to create sort of carburetor holes. What I do is I go and I'm going to make one hole below each one of these holes here. Now, you can use, some people will actually use a drill bit. You take a drill, you put the hole in. I go up to, the first, or in this case, I'll take the second hole, the second rib up above, and right below here, I'll go down there, and I'll take it and I'll push real hard. It's very stiff. I actually sharpened this end, but however you can do, but I'm going to make holes all the way around. Okay, once that's done, I take each one and I just twist it to make the hole large enough. Now what these do is these are going to actually give the fire a little bit of extra air when it burns down and everything is all clogged up. The fire is still going to burn very poorly, but it gives it enough to keep it going. This is sort of a keep alive. It's secret sauce that allows it to be a very effective fire. People don't really realize it. They don't really know that it's working, but the difference between not having these holes and having the holes is the difference between a fire going completely out and a fire working pretty effectively. That's how I make my standard hobo stove. I'll show you how it lights, and oh yes, when you light it up, the bottom of the stove gets very hot. This is not like a normal stove where you've got some insulation underneath. This is directly heat. If I put it on here, it would burn this whole thing right up. So it's got to be on a rock, on a pavement, something that's not going to burn. If you put it on the ground, it's going to cause the grass all around it to fire up, to turn to flame. You really have got to be careful. Put this someplace safe. Got a old cinder block here. Put on top of the tray. All right, this is all loaded up, ready to go. Let's find that seam. Should take one match. Got our matches here.
By the way, you're going to notice that all all poor people, even if they were just poor, are fat. And that's because you develop diabetes, where your blood sugar makes you hungry all the time. I know from personal. There is a way to cure that, by the way, and that's to eat a prison diet. So if you want to go to like your local detention center site and read what they feed people, And I wouldn't advise eating most of it, but the bread and some other things. And then drink nothing but water for like a month, actually for a couple of weeks. You'll purge your body. I mean, it's actually a cure for diabetes. Believe it or not, it will take back your body so quick that it's a cure. I know because I did it in prison. After a couple weeks, I didn't even get hungry. And I could go all day without eating. I lost 40 pounds in 2 months and 10 days. And I could have stayed in there and lost every bit of the fat I had on my body. You'll find the people who even went into prison fat come out of it thin. Just something to think about.
Just regular old wooden matches, and let's see how she goes. Now I have here thorns that I got from a apple orchard. I loaded it with various sizes of wood in a staggered formation. Once it starts, you can literally pick it up and tip it if you want the fire to work a little bit better. But basically, there it goes. Begins to throw off some flame after a while, and look at her go. Now you can already see.
So I love this stuff. What can I say?
Don't have one, you don't have to have it.
Now these are more well-to-do people with all their little tools, and obviously they got money to have a place to work, and now this thing is, I don't know if this is the one I saw, but very cool. And no, this isn't. We'll see if he uses a thing of toilet paper to make it. It may be the same one. I don't know. So, oh yeah. Okay, this is probably the one
There
I
is
saw.
nothing professional about what I'm about to show you. The heater, the wick.
Now this would work inside in like where the electricity went off in the middle of winter, and it was like minus 15 degrees outside. And you would cram yourself into a little room, and because it's isopropyl alcohol, you buy the pure, 90% or whatever, and it would keep you from freezing.
It's a roll of toilet paper. That's it. The cheaper, the better. The fuel is nothing more than isopropyl alcohol. The can, of course, came from Home Depot.
Okay, you can go to any paint store and get these cans. Okay.
And then I simply twisted it and pull it all out. Once it is out, of course, then all you have is just toilet paper. You'll notice that it's a little bigger than the can, which is fine. It should be. So to get it into the can, I simply squeezed it and bend it as much as I can. And that way, what I did was to simply work it inside the can. It'll get in there, trust me. With a little bit of effort, it'll get in. If you don't have a 1-quart size paint can, then you're going to have to use a coffee pan. By the way, just to get this out of the way, I know you're going to put some alcohol on top when you first put it in, because you want to try it, right? Well, this is what's going to happen. It's going to burn the toilet paper. Now you know, so you don't have to do it. Once you get it in the can, and I'm going to use the coffee can here for this demonstration, what I do, I put some rocks inside the can on top of the toilet paper. Now, again, as I said before, the lid should be metal. If you're going to use a lid to turn off, shall I say, or to go ahead and cut off the flame, it should be metal, not plastic, because a metal container will not burn. Okay, I'm glad I got that out of the way. Now back to this can, all right? The can itself is the container. This is the container. It has to be metal. You do not want to use plastic. You just don't. Okay. In the can, I've used rocks. And I use rocks because I'm going to use that as my way of controlling the flame, the intensity of the flame. All right? Less rocks in the can will have greater flame. You understand? It's my regulator. Now we're going to add the alcohol to everything. Now I'll pour the alcohol in. Remember, it's a 32 fluid ounce bottle. And I'll pour it in and I'll watch it as it sinks down into the can itself. And it'll do it. You'll be able to see it. It's not a problem. Keep doing it, of course. And incidentally, the prices that I have listed, these are simply what I paid here in Virginia. What the prices will be where you live will be different, I'm sure. The point I'm trying to make is to give you an idea what the prices of different things. I did not list the price of coffee because that's such a variable. It depends on what kind of coffee you like and all that sort of stuff. The point is, though, you can get your roll of toilet paper in an 11-ounce can of coffee. Anyway, back to this. You keep pouring in the alcohol into the container. And don't worry about the rocks. You don't have to. That's an optional thing. As a matter of fact, if you don't have the rocks, you'll have a good... The metal lid you see here is from the 1-quart container, and it does not seal the coffee can. Now, the next thing that I did, and only because of aesthetics, I did buy a clay pot because I did not want to put my container with my flame onto the garage floor by itself. So I rested in a container in a clay pot. Besides, for aesthetic reasons, I think it looks okay, don't you? Just put this into the container, put this into the clay pot, make a flame to light your portable heater. And that's what I did. Now, for this experiment, I started at 12:59, approximately 1 o'clock, and I went on for approximately 2 hours, I think, and I wanted to show you the result. I started at 1:14, and my little experiment ended at 3:14. In other words, 13:13 to 15. I'm sorry, 13:14 to 15:14. All right, so on we go. Onto the garage floor it went, and then I lit my can, my container, with my heater, and notice that the flame is not as intense as I wanted it. Remember I said now I'm using the rocks, and I'm using the rocks simply to regulate the size of the flame. So, since it was not as intense as I wanted it to be, I simply remove the rock and make it bigger. Just like that. This is an option, of course. You don't have to do that. But I did it because I thought it would be a good way to regulate the flames. Now, later on, I will put, and by the way, yes, I know my garage floor is pretty dirty, but then, bear with me, okay? Just bear with me. So that's what the flame looked like once it was lit and with my little rock regulators. And this is the time, inside temperature, and the outside temperature. You'll notice that, by the way, I used 2/3 of the bottle of alcohol. Maybe I could have used more. I don't think so, though. So for 2/3, I had from 13:14 to 15:14, and you can see the correlation between the inside temperature and the outside temperature. And keep in mind that the garage, or the space rather, was not insulated. So there you have it. I would welcome your comments and your suggestions, because this, I think, could save somebody's life. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you so much for sharing.
Okay, so I find these things interesting. I hope you do too. I think they'd be very helpful in certain situations. Sorry, I'm having my tea. So, let's see.
Protect the homeless who are very vulnerable
So
to
what I'm going to look
coronavirus.
at here, what I'm going to look at here is if you're looking for my YouTube, see how I would find it, if I can even find it. So, see how I have him subscribed and the bell is, yeah. But then how do you get to my playlist? It's easy to get to Status Quo because it's in the playlist. I'm going to open it up real big for a second. Okay, if I open it up real big, okay, if it's one of these, maybe you can't see it because of the chat. It's pathetic the way different, I don't care what group it is, or what channel it is, they kind of take over, so I'm gonna try just searching for progressive. News. And it looks like you'll find absolutely nothing but all these other channels. So I'm going to suggest another thing because I know how I find it on a different computer or what. I put in PDQ news. Try doing a search like that. Still nothing. Just everybody else's channel but mine. Gosh, I don't know how you find mine. How about we try PDHQ News? I spend my life and I can't understand why no one will listen. Give me a hand, it's alright. Still nothing. It's alright. So it's virtually impossible. When the people around me don't give a damn, it's alright. Yeah. Nothing. Okay, so let's try going directly to my channel. Now, how would you get here? DPHQ News. Let's try, because originally it was Democratic Party Headquarters News. So DPHQ News. Let's try that one. Okay, so put in DPHQ News, and then you'll find Progressive News. So that's the way to find it. And then you would click on it, and you would click on DPHQ News. No? No? Okay, so it doesn't work quite the way it works on TV. Because I get it on TV by going here, and then somehow I'm able to get to the channel. Come down here and click on Progressive News. Okay, once we're here, I suppose just add it to your favorites, but this is actually the channel, which is crazy, right? I don't know, it's a work in progress, but if you want to find me, put in DPHQ News and look for an actual video. Here's the first one that I find, and you can just click on Progressive News right there, and you should be able to see my videos, and you should be able to see my playlists. And at that point you want to go down to created playlists, and like this will be the latest one.
Protect the homeless who are very vulnerable.
I guess we're done with the playlist for today. I've pretty much covered them all. I need to add some more. Oh, there's 42. Why does it only show? Oh, now they're starting to show up. So we were down to here. I'll click on the next
Prehistoric
one.
bird fossils are being used to potentially help with modern aviation and drone technology, believe it or not. RT's correspondent John Huddy takes a closer look.
It's called a pterosaur, and it was basically a flying lizard from more than 200 million years ago that could be as tall as a giraffe, weighing more than 600 pounds, and was one of the earliest known vertebrates.
Okay, this story tells me a couple of things about people, and I was thinking about it yesterday. I'm thinking about it now. Human beings copy nature. They don't invent anything. They copy nature. Well, I shouldn't say they don't invent anything. I mean, often they take pieces and like a puzzle and rearrange them until they get something they are interested in experimenting with. But basically, nature has already created probably some of the best flying machines ever. You think, oh, well, we invented the rocket. Well, no, because there are squids and stuff that propel themselves through kind of a rocket type thing. And people see these things, you know? And they think, well, how can I create a rocket? Well, I can't just blow bubbles out my ass and propel myself along. So maybe I need to create a different type of propulsion. And I'm not saying that we don't advance on these things beyond, but at the same time, isn't anything that a human being does natural? I mean, just because it pollutes or whatever doesn't mean it's not natural. I mean, creatures pollute. Creatures excrete things. I mean, some creatures make poison. How is that good for the environment? But they're good for them. It's all about survival and everything. So, what I'm saying is that we see things in nature, and sometimes we don't even. Sometimes we, you know, people spend a lot of time experimenting. So I know, like, I will dry out all different kinds of leaves and try smoking them a little bit, seeing what the effects are on myself. This is something that people have been doing for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And I'm not saying that people aren't destroying their environment. I mean, that's kind of a given at this point. But it is natural. It's the natural end game for any species that completely takes over the globe and terraforms it to its specifications. You know what I mean? But the fact that they're going back and digging up fossils from millions of years ago and using them to tweak flight. So what's more important? Computer-aided design, or looking backwards a million years at a reptile that could fly? So when you look at Big Pharma, what's more important, the chemists that work there, or the people who are sitting in some rainforest somewhere, seeing what they can do with every single plant? Well, I say it's pretty obvious that it's looking at something, 50 million years old, and that it's the people who are going through the plants and the last of the rainforest, and this is why the rainforests are so important. Not because we can't get along without them for air, which might be true, and I think, you'd have to look at that. And I really think what it comes down to with that is population growth as it eats up the green space, because who's to say that a lawn and a big tree are any different, or that land like this, scrub land or whatever you want to call them, plains, produce less air than a tree. That's what common, that's what people tell me all the time. Oh, we need the trees. But at the same time, and I love trees, and I wish we had more of them, but at the same time, who's to say that just grass can't produce the same thing? It's all a question of surface area. Now, maybe certain trees, because they get sun from all sides, produce more oxygen, right? I'm not gonna pretend like I know, but that's something that we definitely would need to understand better. And so I think what it comes down to is, the square miles of vegetation and the type of vegetation, and that we should do that. We should have our scientists look very carefully at the whole planet as an oxygen-producing machine and how we're going to maintain that for our own health. I mean, these guys are looking at probably making the next stealth fighter, right? I don't know how important that is in the scheme of things. Okay, this is my buddy. I do like his videos. And he took over Progressive News for me while I was in jail and just kept an eye on things if people wanted to join and stuff. And I think I don't know if I took him off as administrator anymore, but I could trust him as opposed to a lot of other people on YouTube.
This is Eyes on New Jersey News.
Good afternoon, John Edmonds from Eyes on New Jersey News. I'm reporting from Sussex County, New Jersey, just outside the Andover Subacute and Rehab Center number 2, which will be seeing a National Guard presence this Friday. Now, in a press conference earlier today, Governor Murphy announced that 120 National Guard members will be deployed to assist at hard-hit long-term care facilities across the state. The troops are non-health professionals who will be helping with whatever facilities need. This could include janitorial services, cooking, logistics, and more. Just last month, the Andover facility seen behind me had a large police...
And I have to say that I've been promoting for a long time that we take our military and we turn it into useful jobs for the public. I mean, what are they doing when they're not training to defend our country? How about bringing them home from Afghanistan and Iraq and I don't know how many people we have overseas in Germany and Japan, and put them to work right here doing essential services. I don't know about policing, because these people tend to be kind of brutal, and I think we should police them, because they are kind of brutal. But what's wrong with doing things like this?
Police presence after an anonymous tip of a dead body in a shed led police to discover 17 bodies piled in a small morgue designed to hold 4. Now today in Trenton, another large protest organized by New Jersey for Medical Freedom took place with attendees raising awareness on big box businesses remaining open while smaller ones were ordered to remain closed. In an order signed on Wednesday, Murphy extended the public health emergency lockdown by an additional...
By the way, those people clearly were not social distancing, and New Jersey has the most deaths. I mean, look at this place with 17 bodies piled up in their morgue.
30 days through at least June 5th. As of this broadcast, the state is reporting that positive cases in New Jersey is at 133,635, with an unfortunate 8,801 COVID-19 related deaths. May God be with those deceased and their families. In regards to viral contraction of coronavirus, as well as all other deadly viruses, Please remember to wash your hands, practice your social distancing, and avoid touching the face when outside. From the Andover Subacute Rehabilitation Center, I'm John Edmonds, Verizon New Jersey News.
Another good video from John. He does good work. Okay, all that trouble just over trying to lower the volume on this. Okay, so at this point I want to tell you I have a plan that would reopen schools and anything like a school, reopen businesses. So here it is. My plan to reopen the economy. So every business, every school, etc. has grounds. So you have all the teachers, all the support personnel, okay, how about the Capitol? How about these idiots in Congress and the Senate getting back to work? Okay, so you take all the support people, all of the congressmen and senators, all the security people, and you test them going in. You set up housing all around on the grounds, if you had to start with tents, and it would be like summer camp. Instead of having to test everybody every day going in and out, once a month, once every 3 months, whatever, you would test them. You would put them in these temporary housings, which would be minimal, obviously. Maybe they could improve them as time went by. And you would only allow people on who had been tested and who are going to stay. So if you were a journalist, I don't know, maybe you could test some people as they go in. And that way, like school would be like a summer camp, right? Or a boarding school. And you would have only people in it that were going to stay and do their job or go to school or whatever. And I know it might seem a little extreme, but at the same time, it would get the country back up and running. So a meat packing plant. You would say there's 180 people at the meat packing plant. You would set it up with housing right there, temporary to start, tents even to start, whatever. And those people would stay there for months. And they would be protected from the virus. You know, they wouldn't have to worry. They could all anti-social distance or whatever. And it would be great. I mean, it would be great. That's the way I would do it. I know, I'm impressive. I mean, it is. It's a brilliant plan, and I think other people should think about it.
Could you talk about both these things? What kind of safety net the Russian government has provided for those who have lost their jobs, and the impact of the combination of the collapse of the oil prices and the coronavirus emergency?
Sure. To your first question, there frankly haven't been many measures at all, which is leading, in my estimation, more to the downtick in Putin's popularity, not the spread of the virus itself, but rather...
Okay, so Russia hasn't had a communist government since Lenin. Stalin wasn't a communist. He was an authoritarian. He was a thug. He was a dictator. And they haven't had it since then. So for people to criticize Russia, well, don't criticize it as a communist country. Criticize it as a dictatorship, at least since nearly the very beginning. And of course, with the last remnants of communism gone, the United States basically toppling the government there, all that's left is an authoritarian, a fake democracy, like we have here. Fake democracy. And really the measure of a country is I mean, obviously, how it's run by its people. And we don't have a country that's run by its people, and neither do they. And we meddle in everybody's affairs, and that's why countries turn into, as Trump would call them, piece of shit countries. I mean, the countries he's talking about are less pieces of shit than the United States. Because the United States hasn't had time to meddle with them yet.
Social distancing is becoming a distant memory in some US states. The rush to reopen restaurants and public spaces may result in a spike of new cases of COVID-19. In order to help local authorities reopen safely, the CDC was set to publish 17 pages of guidelines and recommendations. But that report was shelved by the White House, according to reporting from the Associated Press, concerning many that the agency with decades of experience beating back disease has been sidelined.
Our goal is a healthy America, a healthy economy. The route to that is to have the standards, testing, and
this is showcasing how only my plan will work. I mean, we will have to create non-COVID hotspots and cordon them off and only allow people in who test negative. And I don't know how you can do that with small businesses. And even if you do, it won't be enough to keep them alive. So if we want to keep those businesses alive, we're going to have to subsidize them. So a coffee shop that can only survive, like Starbucks or something, on 5,000 customers a day, will now only get 500 customers a day, and they will all sit at tables that are more than 6 feet apart, and they'll all have to be masks and gloves and everything. This is really no way to work. But if they have to, and if it's really that important for us to keep all these small businesses alive, then they will have to, the government's going to have to subsidize their loss in revenues. So instead of subsidizing large corporations that don't need it, just filling their pockets with money, we need to concentrate on ways to create a working system that will involve subsidizing these companies until this pandemic is over. And I watched a very a believable piece by a very believable person who used to be a pandemic expert or something, and she's predicting 36 months. So this is like 3 years, and she's saying that's an optimistic. And I hope I'm not quoting her wrong if it was 36 weeks, but I'm pretty sure it was 36 months. So that's 3 years of this pandemic. And maybe it'll die down in the summer, I don't know. I certainly hope so. The argument that the economy may be as deadly as the virus, if not more, is very compelling. but it's being pushed by the corporatists, by the establishment, which makes me think it's bullshit. And of course, as I always say, look at South Korea, because they seem to have been able to figure it out. So you can go with that instead of my plan. And maybe they are incorporating my plan to a certain extent. Maybe I'm not understanding how their plan works quite right. I mean, I understand how it works, so at least I've studied what's online. And it's mainly through contact tracing, which is very hard with this, but and it certainly will limit a lot of our legal rights. Constitutional, etc. I still think my idea of creating COVID-free zones where people are not allowed in and out in order to create the production that we need and the environment that we need to thrive as a nation is a great idea and needs to be implemented. These people, they don't give a shit about you. They're more interested in their, $12,000 freezers full of ice cream.
In the end, he's exonerated. I have some anger towards it for being listed on there. I mean, it pisses me off that, my family's put in jeopardy in something I'm not involved with.
I love this girl's show, Red Lines. It's from the Gray Zone, Max Blumenthal, and when he's not talking about Syria, he's actually very informative. And he has a point about Syria as far as the establishment wanting to take over everything and wanting to, establishment including neocons, neoliberals. I'm very familiar with all that. I got into that a little bit earlier about how I know from personal experience how they do what they do and what they do. So, but I really think that giving these people a platform, making them look like they're heroes and stuff, these people that she's talking to,
reporting on the slimy and downright criminal nature of Venezuela's U.S.-backed opposition.
right, these people are working with the worst of the worst, the scummiest, and really they don't need a platform. So I would advise you to not actually watch this video. Basically, money-grubbing, greedy people are sucked into this, like my dad was, like Christopher Ashby was. People who would do anything for money, including costing the lives of millions of innocent people in other countries because they see them as inhuman, and they will describe them as inhuman, saying they have no love for people.
Jobless claims still on the rise, as we just mentioned. New numbers released Thursday show 3.2 more million Americans filed for unemployment in the last week of April. That brings the total.
Okay, this is going to talk about how the stock market has jumped, and the fact is the stock market is being subsidized by the American government, trillions going to them and their people. just a total drain on our economy. You know, it's like you're sitting in your house and you've got your refrigerator running and a few things that you need, and somebody comes in and taps into your electricity and draws thousands and thousands of watts off of it to feed themselves and take care of themselves and make themselves rich. And you have to pay the bill every month. I mean, that's basically what's going on.
Hi everyone, can you see me? Can you guess where I am? Well, if you guessed under the shade cloth, you are right.
And yes, I love Callie Kim, I think she is 68 or something like that. And I love to bring you as many videos on gardening as I can, especially in the spring, because I think they're very helpful and that we should all absolutely work on our gardening and stuff like that.
Because the virus and its consequences are moving so fast. 6 weeks ago, when we launched our first response plan, there were lots of countries which didn't really have significant numbers of cases. Now the virus is in every country on the planet, affecting effectively every country on the planet. And we project, unfortunately, that in the countries with the biggest humanitarian challenges, the kinds of places I work, Yemen, Syria, Myanmar, other parts of Asia, as well as Latin America, Africa, the peak of the virus and the disease is probably some 3 to 6 months ahead. But in addition to that, we've now got an economic calamity alongside the health disaster. And because of the contraction...
Okay, and the rich thrive on poverty. So the more desperate people you have, the more you can manipulate, right? And so they're loving this. You know, they had it used to be every 100 years or something that we had a Great Depression, and I guess it still is to a certain point. But after about the World War II, it started being every 8 years we had not a depression, but a recession. And as Chong used to say, recession, depression, oppression, it's all the same thing, right?
$1,200 and shut the fuck up about the fact that we're giving ourselves trillions.
So I'm putting shameless self-promotion.
So that shows
you can review content from Crash Course Organic Chemistry with the
long and or an hour and a half long, and I just wanted you to see that. That was like absolutely about what I was just talking about with the electricity in your house. They're sucking all the electricity out of our economy just to keep their stock market, just to prove us all wrong. Oh, the country is doing wonderful. Bullshit. It's being artificially propped up. Now this is on organic chemistry, and I've taken it up as my new hobby. I'm learning this stuff, and you know, it's up to you if you want to learn it. I just put it out there in case you wanted a new education in some particular type of thing. So I'm learning organic chemistry, and this is the second one.
Crash Course app available now for Android and iOS devices.
Yelling about a sword. Or if they're trying to say they're embarrassed in Peru with a fragmented I'm embarrassed.
So this is about the basics of organic nomenclature. So it's explaining how chemists create these names that they come up with. And if you want to learn this, then it's important that you memorize it. So I keep this video around and I watch it over and over again until I have it memorized.
Rosada, they're actually saying they're pregnant. Language is complicated, and it can be especially confusing in the chemistry lab. If we ask our lab partner to pass the dichloromethane and they hand us a bottle labeled methylene chloride, is that the same chemical or not? To unite the scientific community, the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, otherwise known as IUPAC, was established in 1919. This group wanted to make sure that chemists around the world could communicate accurately. 100 years later, IUPAC is still the guiding organization for all things nomenclature. Thanks to them, we have some standard rules for naming organic chemicals. Chemistry as a field was already over 100 years old. Many chemicals had common names given to them by the people who discovered them based on their source or smell or color. For instance, vanillin is isolated from vanilla beans, and cinnamaldehyde is isolated from cinnamon. Alcohol, ether, acetone, and acetic acid are common names too. While some common names might sound fun, you have to memorize them. And they don't tell you much besides, like, there's a chemical responsible for the flavor in vanilla ice cream called vanillin. Not super useful for learning chemical structures. Sometimes chemists even disagreed about what each common name meant, sort of like regional differences about what to call a carbonated beverage. Despite IUPAC's best attempts to make organic chemistry nomenclature less confusing, many common names are still used today. Probably because vanillin is easier to say and put on a bottle than 4-hydroxy-3-methoxybenzaldehyde. But that longer name is a systematic name that follows a set of rules, which means anyone who knows those rules can draw the structure. There are 3 basic steps to IUPAC systematic naming. We'll add more as we discover more about organic molecules throughout the series, but for now, these will get us started. Number 1, find the longest carbon chain and give it a root name. Number 2, identify the highest priority functional group and add its suffix to the root name. And number 3, identify the types of substituents and their positions on the carbon chain. Then add a numbered prefix to the root name. So we start building any systematic name with the root name, which comes from the longest carbon chain in the molecule. The word longest is key, because some molecules will have long chains sticking out that can throw you off. So make sure to do a little extra counting to make sure you actually found the longest one. Carbon chains containing up to 4 atoms have arbitrary sounding root names. 1 carbon is meth, 2 is eth, 3 is prop, and 4 bute. This can be a little tricky to remember, but you can use this mnemonic to help. Monkeys eat purple bananas. For carbon chains with 5 to 12 atoms, the root names are similar to geometric shapes. For example, a pentagon in geometry is a 5-sided ring. And if a carbon compound has the word pent as its root, then it's a 5-carbon chain. A 6-carbon chain is hex, 7 is hept, 8 is oct, 9 is non, 10 is dec, 11 is undec, and 12 is dodec. If you need a root name for a carbon chain with more than 12 atoms, I don't have it memorized. There are plenty of resources out there to look them up. Chemists usually don't deal with longer chains, and there are plenty of other things to remember besides what a 56-carbon chain is called. Back to our IUPAC rules. Once we've counted our carbons and have a root name, we need to add a suffix to indicate what kind of organic molecule we're dealing with. The simplest organic molecules are hydrocarbons, which only have hydrogen and carbon atoms. There are 4 kinds of hydrocarbons: alkanes, alkenes, alkynes, and aromatics. But we'll only talk about the first 3 for now, because smelly aromatic compounds are a little more complicated. Alkanes only have single bonds between carbons. For these compounds, we take the root name and tack on a suffix ane. For example, this skeletal structure is a 6-carbon chain, so the root is hex. And because there are only single bonds, it's an alkane, and we add the suffix ane. It's hexane. Alkanes are kind of boring compared to their hydrocarbon cousins. They're low-energy couch potatoes and don't interact with many other compounds. On the other hand, alkenes and alkynes have functional groups. Remember last episode, we said that functional groups are where all the cool chemistry happens. In alkenes, the functional groups are double bonds between carbons. And in alkynes, the functional groups are triple bonds between carbons. Alkenes and alkynes can do fun reactions to make things like light-emitting polymers, which are big molecules with regions where electrons kind of move around on a racetrack that absorbs energy and emits light. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To name an alkene, we find the longest chain of carbon atoms, and it must include a double bond. If the longest carbon chain doesn't include a double bond, it's not named as an alkene. Sorry, I don't make the rules, IUPAC does. Since IUPAC rules are all about communication, we want to let people know where that double bond is on the chain. So we'll number the carbons starting on the end closest to the double bond. For the sake of consistency, we want to keep the numbers as low as possible. Then we'll take the lowest number touching the double bond, combine it with the suffix -ine, and add that to the root name of our chain. For example, the
Okay, so you can see how you can learn just about anything online. And I really think that all education should be done online now. And then you should have testing centers. People could come in the virus, they could come in and have a clean cubicle where they could test and not interact with anybody else. But I think the pandemic has shown, I mean, you know, let the rich people have their Harvards and where they can all go to catch the virus together or whatever, while the rest of us can get any number of degrees online by simply watching these videos and studying them and then going in and being tested.
How long was this place open? 70 years.
So you got yourself a regular zipper lighter, and we're gonna take out. And
yeah, I thought this was an interesting video on behalf of Tara School. I mean, he does have stuff that doesn't seem to be so Amazon oriented from time to time. Is of course video of the attempted coup. What a joke, right? I mean, I'm even embarrassed by the neocons. How they get themselves involved with such low-life scumbags, incompetent. I mean, on top of everything, they're incompetent. I'm glad they're incompetent because Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, they're all innocent. They haven't done anything to the United States except for, I mean, the best I would give the neocons is I would say maybe they went in the early years and invested in these countries, helped build oil refineries and things, and yeah, so make a deal to pay the United States back, say double what it invested in real dollars, real-time dollars, and then let it go. You know, how much do these countries have to pay for the investments made? Didn't they pay for the investments initially anyway? So all these things need to be sorted out. And I don't usually watch the damage report, but I go through their videos, and maybe 1 in 20 I find actually doesn't do some egregious misrepresentation of reality.
A nondescript building in rural Oxfordshire, a new and unlikely battlefront against COVID-19. We've been given exclusive access.
So this is going to be about how amazing this guy and this girl are, but then why is everybody dying? I mean, it's an obvious point that can be made. I mean, Britain has, next to the United States, probably the worst record of controlling the virus.
What about the external conditions confronted day to day? For instance, as much as 40% of people in the Navajo reservation do not have running water. How that affects their ability to combat this disease?
And this has been going on forever, and I blame both sides, but obviously the United States, the neocons again, the ones who force these people onto reservations. And, and I blame them for being so anti-American. Because really, I believe all minorities should be brought up, pulled up out of their poverty. And these people, by wanting to have and believing that they're going to be given some kind of, nation of their own within the contiguous 50 states, they're nuts. All that the Bureau of Land Management, I think that's ones who manage these people, all that they've done is created open-air prisons for these people and forced them to live in poverty in the hope that they'll force them all to join the ranks of the impoverished, to become at the very bottom of Americans, right? Clawing their way up, where only a few of them will ever make it. This is the history of the United States, and the indigenous population is the worst treated. So I think we should start with them. I think we should get them all. Maybe they can keep their reservations, but we ought to build them up into regular American type stuff, and we should get them. I mean, Americans should be Americans. Americans should be forced to join the rest of us and live with rest of us instead of pretending like they're better than everybody else. That's the problem I have with them, is that they want to have their own little country in the country and act like they have their own country because they're better than us and they shouldn't have to suffer with the rest of us. So, and I'm not going to get into all the stupid bullshit that the neocons, the conservatives in this country have inflicted. I mean, you could go back 500, 400 years or something to when we just slaughtered them all and infected them with smallpox and whatever. So that's a horror, right? What they're doing isn't a horror. It's just being very, what's the word? I don't know. It's like intransigent, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But they're just resisting being Americans. And I don't want any land from California to New York to be, what about the white Texans who want to always claim that we're a commonwealth. Well, Kentucky is a commonwealth. Come on, man, let's all get together. Let's all get together. Let's fight things together. Let's admit that we're all independent or interdependent. And let's fight the common enemy, which produces the poverty in this country, just so it has vulnerable people that it can manipulate. Let's do it together instead of doing it as like 2 nations or 5 nations or 20 nations or 50 nations, as in 50 states. I mean, this is ridiculous, man. We all have a common cause. We all have a common enemy. We all breathe the same air. We all care about our children, whatever.
Hi everyone, Miss Silva here, Learn to Grow, up in the Pacific Northwest, Zone 8B. It is a gorgeous...
And again, I love to show the first video. She was just kind of showing her garden off. But this, and she did talk about shading because she's in a really hot area in Southern California, Los Angeles somewhere. But this girl produces some of the best videos on gardening.
Stay out here, and in fact the next couple of days is supposed to be warm and sunny, so I'm so excited. So today I'm going to show you the steps to hardening off or acclimating your indoor starts. So this is a step that you don't want to skip. You don't want to just put your plants outside after you start them indoors. This is a process that will take about 7 to 10 days depending on your climate and the weather. Especially for warm-loving plants such as tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, those you'd have to wait till after your last frost date, with nighttime temperatures for tomatoes of at least 50 degrees, peppers about 55 degrees, and eggplants about 60 degrees nighttime temperatures. And these plants will do or thrive best in temperatures between 65 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. So you don't want to acclimate them too early, especially if it's still cold outside. These tomatoes here, I think I've got 3 plants in there, have been hardened off, and I think it's already on its 9th day. So I left it completely outside on its 7th day. And
So she's just explaining how, you know, to not shock your plants. So to bring them from grow lights all of a sudden out to the sunlight, very dangerous. I think that you can do like what the first lady was talking about, which I didn't show you, but shading. Shading will make a big difference. And, you know, as many plants as I have, I'm not going to bring them in and out of the house or the garage or whatever constantly. I don't see how you could even, I mean, she does nothing but garden, is my guess. I have a hard time believing she has time for anything else. But she does an amazing job at it.
And they did really well. Also, you want to stop watering and do not fertilize about a week before you start the hardening off process. So we were trying to get them used to the outdoor conditions where they won't be as nurtured as they were when they were indoors. So this will...
I mean, I think she treats these plants like kids. And she does have kids. She really loves her plants.
Toughen up the plants. So you want to find a sheltered place for your plants when you start to put them outside, and you want them in the shade for the first 2 days. And after that, we'll slowly increase the hour by 1 to 2 hours each day until the 7th to 10th day. And when the process is complete, you can go ahead and plant your plants in the garden or in containers. And I try...
Okay, you're welcome to go to her channel and find out everything about her. See, I'm subscribed, but I didn't put all. And you do need to put all if you want to get all the notifications. And I'd like you to do that for me.
Try to transplant them on a cloudy day.
Plus, give me a thumbs up. You know, help me out here. I want to talk to as many people as I can. And you can always, somewhere down here, put comments, and I'll get them at my email, which I could show you, but I don't want to get into the middle of it in the news. Okay, so basically she's talking about hardening plants before you put them outside. I don't do anything inside anymore. It's just way too much work.
So this is from a guy named, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, Benjamin Applebaum. So he's a writer. He wrote a book called The Economist's Hour. There it is, The Economist's Hour. And this has to do with the meatpacking plants right now. Because right now, there's a big problem with the meatpacking plants. And the ranchers or the farmers, they feel like they're being exploited by the meatpacking plants, which are a monopoly. Here we go. I'm going to read this to you. This is from his book, The Economist's Hour, and just enjoy. I'm going to read you 3 paragraphs real fast. He says, in the early 20th century, the Great Chicago Stockyard, 320 acres of cows in the middle of a crowded city, was home.
Okay, so he's going to talk about monopolies, and absolutely right. And if you don't know about Jimmy Dore, he's here on YouTube with the rest of us. And look at this, I still haven't. So, you know, do that. Subscribe, put notifications all. If they're channels like Jimmy Dore and me, 99% of their videos are going to be about what you want to hear about. If you like what you're watching right now, adding my 2 cents about all these things, And what was interesting to me about this video, since I'm working hard to start the Progressive Party, with the progressive movement and all the associated movements out there, you know, whatever they are, that are still truly progressive. I think our revolution may or may not be still. It's got Nina Turner at its head. But what he's going to talk about is how Theodore Roosevelt, the president way back in 1819 or something, was the last president to break up trusts, or to break up monopolies, I mean. And I think it's a very big feather in our hat that we're trying to revive a party that actually did things that parties now wouldn't even think about. They wouldn't even try to break it up. They wouldn't ever try, because there's lots of opportunities in capitalism. I mean, if you break up monopolies, if you create true competition, if you eliminate barrier to entry, that means that people who are smart, who have good ideas, can get loans and promote their ideas, and therefore create a better country for all of us. None of that happens in capitalism now. As a matter of fact, I would argue that we don't even have a capitalist system. We don't have a system that uses all of the strengths of capitalism. As a matter of fact, our version of capitalism, crony capitalism, called vulture capitalism, does just the opposite. It eliminates competition. It eliminates, well, that wouldn't work. I can't say it eliminates barriers to entry. It doesn't promote the elimination of barriers to entry. God, that's hard to say. Okay, you know what I mean, though. So, like, if you're a smart guy and you've got a great idea, like, take my idea. Take one of my, you know, I'm a prolific inventor and idea guy. So I came up with the idea of putting tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people to work, going out and eliminating the brush and the stuff that fires thrive on in places in California where they have these massive fires. So go around the areas where there's people living and completely clean up all the brush so that there's nothing but like grass. I mean, this would involve like mowing I don't know how many acres of land, so that and creating fire breaks, etc., so that these people don't get burned up in their homes. I have somebody I know who lost their home in the Camp Fire, the Paradise Fire. So have them go out and gather up all that and use it as fuel. Instead of burning oil or gas, have electric that is powered by straight up biomass. Not only that, but do, let's see if I can find something here to show you. There are ways of taking all the pollution out of certain systems. So, like, say you can criticize me and say, well, you're talking about burning wood to make electricity and et cetera, et cetera. Well, and that produces carbon. Well, no, it doesn't, because the same amount of carbon is produced through the natural breakdown of all these woods and stuff. and they become flammable, extremely flammable. So you build plants that do this, and let me see if I can get it. What's it called? Oh yeah, gasification. And see, all these companies are already advertising it because I've been promoting it and it's been on here for a long time. And these are all going to be these idiots. But I will go because Jeff Bezos and Google are just promoting the people they like. But I heard about it first here a long time before they ever thought about even thinking
You see in the background, but we're going to make a smaller version of it. We're only going to use these 2 propane tanks instead of 3 like we used in the background one. We're going to use the same basic steel that we used to make our reduction.
Okay, this would be the way that you would eliminate the pollution from the burning of the stuff, and then you would be left with oils and gases in liquid form. After you do this, this is capturing the pollution as it goes out, and then you would just have to figure out how to use that. You might use it to lubricate things. You might find a way to burn it and make energy and capture whatever comes off of that. There is always a way to solve your own problems, and 99% of the time they're right in front of you.
Zone. Let me go ahead now and start cutting into these. First of all, once again, I buy these propane tanks from a yard that's already pre-emptied all the tanks. Even the little bleed-off valves are removed out of them. They've been sitting out in the yard for quite a long time. This side here, what I've done is, once again, I used a piece of that flat stock steel, rolled that in a circle until I got the right diameter. The reduction zone. So this ring slides over our reduction zone nicely, and I used that, just set that down there, got my center, marked it out, and cut that hole in there. Now what I'm going to do is...
Okay, I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I'm going to jump through it. But he explains how to make these things, and if he can make them, anybody can, and you could scale them up, right?
Air blowing out here. So what we're going to do now is go ahead, set this thing up, get it full of water, fill that full of wood, and give this our first primary test fire up. Alright folks, so here we go. We're going to give our test fire up. You can see down here at the end where I have our burn area. We got our water tank, everything ready to go. I've already put a little bit of this wood in there, but we're going to put some fine wood first down in the bottom like that.
And this guy is a thinker. I mean, his stuff is beautiful. Everything. All the stuff he does, these water pumping things and these hydrofoil stuff and Tesla generators and all these kind of things. I mean, this is the kind of guy we need working in our Department of Energy and what have you.
Then we're going to take some newspaper and try to strip it up. Set that newspaper, drop it down in there. Alright, so now that we've got smoke, give me a little while, let it get up to temperature. Once it's there, I'll fill the whole thing full of wood. We'll put the cap on it. We'll do our test. Alright folks, so what we're going to do is test out our wood gas. You can see the smoke coming out. So there you go. It's now on fire. You saw the smoke disappear. Got some newspaper here just to do the burn test for you. So now the newspaper's on fire. You can see there's a flame there. And right now, that is a nice clear flame coming from our wood gas. You can't see any of the flame. That's how nice and clean it burns. Let me go ahead and blow it out if I can, and we'll relight it again. So there you go, there's the smoke.
So what he's doing is basically burning these things over and over again. So he burns it at one end, and then he captures, he burns it at another end to run things. It's a viable solution. I think we should all take an interest in all these technologies, these garage scientists, you know. So these monopolies are completely destroying our country, always have, and everybody can sit around and say to themselves, "Oh well, I'm making $100,000 a year. I don't see what everybody's complaining about." Well, what about the people who don't? What about the people who fall through the cracks? And these corporatists have no interest in those people. You know, just keep them quiet, give them food stamps, give them, for single mothers and all that, and we'll keep them out of our hair while we live it up, basically.
Televangelist Rick Wiles used to blame the Jews for COVID-19 because he's a one-trick pony and he loves blaming the Jews for everything. But now he's graduated to saying it's a Chinese bioweapon.
What if they made us believe Wuhan had massive death, that the entire city had to be fumigated?
Yeah. I hate to tell you, but Christian fundamentalists, they're just a bunch of losers. They have no business being involved in anything. Their whole theology and their whole message is one of stupidity, and they ruin religion for all the other people. I mean, I believe in God, but I have a very scientific way of going about my beliefs, and I think that anybody who actually listened to what I had to say would probably find them quite cohesive and understanding. I mean, I can even show you. Go to my group, the Philosopher's Stone. And since I started my group, of course, there's a lot of people who have copied it. None of these groups existed. But here's my group. And I think I do because my religion is all based in particle physics. So let's see if I can. So my basic theory is that the universe is infinite. This means that it is infinite in an infinite number of ways. As far as I can tell, being the height of, and I love to spell phonetically, so you will see misspellings. They're on purpose. The height of intelligence, human beings are still incapable of proving or truly modeling or even understanding infinity. And that's a pretty simple idea, right? If it's infinite, then you can only see as far as you can see. And that has to do with the understanding of our universe. We are constantly saying that the universe is so big, but then we find something out beyond it and we say, oh no, actually we were wrong, it's this big. And I say that will go on infinitely because the universe, I say, is infinite. And then you can look at smaller things, particles. So we decided that compounds were the smallest things, and then we decided, molecules are the smallest things, and then we just, somewhere back in, thousands of years ago, we decided, there's an atom. We just can't see it. Well, the same thing goes on now. There's quantum particles. We just can't see them yet. We can detect them, but we can't see them. And maybe we'll figure out a way to see them. and then we'll decide that, oh, there's probably particles smaller than that out there. It's infinite. We're just expanding our definition of the size based on what we can see or detect or theorize. Sometimes it's just a theory. You know, sometimes we just say, well, these things behave this way because of some particles that we can't see. So anyway, by this I mean ways I think of the universe as infinite. And real quick, I just want to say that the universe and infinity are opposite. They are diametrically opposed. Their definitions are opposite. And that is that something infinite can't be thought of as a thing, as an object, as one. So I will from now on refer to the universe as infinite. So once you get there, right there, you have to understand that the universe isn't as simple as anybody right now wants to think of it. And as such, I think of the universe as being a kind of God, because it's obvious that there's things in our perception that we see every day, things that happen that are more complicated than we can explain simply by, by physics or astronomy or any of that. I mean, how do you explain the fact that everybody you know who's greedy has always ended up being unhappy, right? Neocons, how do you explain that they always end up suffering horribly, creating their own hell on earth, so to speak? Well, that suggests to me a kind of a God, a kind of a karma, something built into the fabric of material that's right. I mean, the chair that you're sitting in, the desk that you're watching this video in front of. It always has a way of fighting back in ways that are impossible for you to fight. Just suggests to me a kind of a God, even if it's just a malevolent God, something that doesn't really care, it's just built in. So I believe in God, but that's the God that I believe. These idiots who believe that, they've got some guy that they can call up and go, protect me or something like that. Well, it does protect you, but it doesn't protect you in the way you're not allowed to do all kinds of bad things to good people and get away with it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
36 months is my best case scenario. Worst case is...
Okay, there's the 36 months. This woman is an expert, and I think that she's giving a better take on this than anybody else I've seen.
Is that it becomes a new permanent feature on the landscape for generations to come. I think we have to, first of all, put aside this image of a wave as a uniform tsunami wave coming across, boom, 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 boom. Everybody gets hit at once. We all are in lockdown, and then the wave is gone, and now we can come out and, hit the beach. It's not like that. If you haven't been paying attention, it's already not a single isolated wave. Parts of the country are starting to get their first cases. Other parts of the country are starting to have a downturn, such as here in New York, where our horrible, horrible epidemic is beginning to come down. And this is how it's going to be for months and months to come. Sporadic outbreaks here, there, moving towards the southern hemisphere, coming back to the northern hemisphere. Different parts of the world hit at different times. And the movement of humanity is going to be the movement of virus. So as people come out of not just lockdown in their homes, but out of their countries and back on airplanes, out of sort of trying to operate business via Zoom into business via personal contact, as the supply chains try to restore a full-scale operation with globalized distribution, and that means globalized human movement, then we're going to once again have sporadic outbreaks. So it's Italy today, it's Portugal tomorrow, it's Albania next week, it's Rio de Janeiro 2 weeks later, and so on and so forth. And this is going to go on for a very long time. Meanwhile, let's say my 36-month scenario is if we have very good luck on vaccine. So let us pretend that we actually do come up with a very effective vaccine, totally safe, and we have it in through the first stage of development and human testing before the middle of this summer. And it actually miraculously is a vaccine that, number one, can be used in a single dose, no booster required. Number two, you don't have to use syringes. It can be administered nasally, orally, or with a patch. So we don't have to worry about the supply chain on syringes and disposal, safe disposal. Number three, it doesn't need to be refrigerated, so you don't have to worry about how are you going to use it in countries without electricity and refrigerators. And number four, it can be mass produced easily. It's not terribly difficult to make. There aren't huge contamination problems, and it's possible to rev up for production of hundreds of millions of doses right away. So then by the end of 2020, we would be in large-scale clinical trials. By early 2021, if those all miraculously turned out to have no side effects and be just, super effective, and we have to figure out how we're going to determine.
Okay, so you can find her at Democracy Now! And again, I didn't. Don't ask me how. I never knew about this, but yeah, you need to do that. And I thought this was just, it's amazing, the planet we live on. It's amazing and it's beautiful, and it offers interesting things every day that keep us from getting bored. By the way, this red tide that produces this isn't like if you walk around in it, you won't catch and die of something. So, but it is an important thing that we study these things and figure out if it's part of the disintegrating environment, and that we maybe need to pay more attention to it. But it's beautiful. And I love these videos because I love people who tinker with shit. I think it's just amazing the stuff they can come up with. And you can easily find lots of this stuff. This is Inventor 101.
Hey there, Jordan Sheridan, joined by Rebecca Kavanaugh. You're a criminal.
And I understand Jordan has to promote himself, and for some reason he has to make money because I guess he's never had a job or something. I don't know. And I guess he's dedicated himself to this YouTube thing as a source of income. But just fast forward past it if, like me, you don't have money to give to him, and let him get his money from the people who do.
And civil rights attorney that has done a lot of great work, particularly on sad cases like this. So Ahmaud Arbery was a 25-year-old African American in Georgia, like in so many.
And you know that this is happening all over the United States, mainly in the South, maybe more in rural areas, areas where there's not as many people around, and it's just fucking lucky that somebody happened to be following these people when they murdered this poor boy.
Other cases, this actually happened months ago. This was in February. He was jogging in his neighborhood and essentially ran into a father-son duo, former police officer and his son, who claim he looked like a burglar that had been breaking in. This was in the broad daylight, and the son basically started shooting at him. There was a tussle and killed him.
So this is somebody who, like me, just happened to have their car cam going, or maybe it's the car cam from these guys. I don't know. I can't imagine they'd supply their own evidence against themselves. So it's probably, you know, I mean, so these people just murdered this poor guy. Right in the middle of the street. It's disgusting, it's horrible, and you know what? It just makes me sick. I'm moving on. We have to end these people, these white supremacists, these pieces of shit that are just, you know, pustules upon the skin of our country, and put an end to them. We need to make them so afraid to even come out in public, I guess. I don't know. We need to end them. Okay, that's just another video about the pros and cons of working at home.
The New York Times had...
And I think as many people who can work at home ought to work at home. I think we should have been working on that for a long time. I think the routine of getting up and going into other people's places and working for them, I think the whole, you know, anyway.
Had an article on what's next for small business in America, and it's really, really not pretty. So listen to this fact, which we just learned. All the forecasts point in the same direction. A wave of small business bankruptcy.
Okay, so he's just going to talk about how bad it's going to get because of the pandemic. I think that that's another one where the virus is pointing out things that are just wrong with capitalism.
So as the pandemic puts a strain on air travel, some homeless in the Los Angeles area, they're taking advantage of the less crowded airport. RT correspondent Natasha Sweet has the details from LAX.
Okay, so all these videos about homeless people and stuff, about Cuomo trying to get all the homeless out of the subways. I mean, where are their solutions? The solution is obviously to put them in a decent place to live, even if it's minimal, and provide them with privacy and provide them with security, and extend that out to everybody from the bottom up, and rebuild our country. I mean, to me, I've always been saying that the wealth of a country is determined by how much poverty there is. And you can't just sweep it under the rug, right? You can't just sweep it under the rug and make sure nobody's seen it and let these people languish in hell. And you can't solve it with halfway houses and stuff. That's where people are abused and ridiculed and forced to accept religions and things like that. It just doesn't work. We need an independent solution for these people that uplifts them, that doesn't tear them down in order to build them back up as something that they're not. And that's what we've got right now.
There is a very good chance that over the last day or so you've seen a video going around. I saw it being shared on Twitter by Sean.
Yeah, this is about Aubrey being murdered again, and it's disgusting, and I'm not going to watch it.
It's an obvious right. That said by Iranian President Hassan Rouhani when talking about lifting a United Nations arms embargo on Tehran later this year. However, the United States wants and plans to extend that embargo, to which Rouhani threatened a, quote, crushing response. So for more on this and all that's going on, we welcome investigators.
So again, we have people in this country who are poor, who are constantly being crushed by these neocons, neoliberals, and then we extend that to our foreign policy. And we try to crush people all around the world. Anybody who won't let us manipulate and take advantage of them. And they're going to talk about that here. Now I love this guy.
I love raised beds.
He's Gardner Scott. And he's got yet another great video here. And it's about maybe a cheaper and better way of making your garden, making raised beds.
I think they've got many benefits for most gardeners. But one of the problems with building a raised bed out of wood is that eventually you're going to have to replace the wood. It will rot. But a great alternative is to make a raised bed out of cinder blocks.
And I would dispute that. If you treat the wood properly, if you clear coat it and stuff like that, it might not rot. But he's going to explain to here that making it out of cinder blocks is actually cheaper. Like, I forget, like half or a quarter of the price. And the cinder blocks are much better to have than the wood.
They last.
And I guess he just figured this out because he's just now coming out with this video. But it's excellent.
For as long as you're going to be gardening. Hi, I'm Gardner Scott, and I discuss everything regions. It's actually made from cinders, from fly ash. And you may have heard that they're not good to use in the garden because of those caustic chemicals that can leach into the soil. But in my region, and in most areas, these blocks are technically not cinder blocks. They're concrete blocks. There's no fly ash in them at all. There's a...
So he's going to talk about this in detail. Here's where you can find him. And you can also watch this video here on my channel all you want.
On May 27th, SpaceX plans to launch 2 NASA astronauts into space, where they will then board the International Space Station. It'll be the first time in almost a decade that we've sent people into space from our own soil. So I, for one, am very, very excited. However, it still costs tens of millions of dollars for every...
So I've been promoting and covering and researching this space elevator thing since they first brought it to my attention. I do believe that getting out into space and stuff is like important, not because I know it, but because I feel it. And unfortunately, like everything else in our establishment government, it's being used just to promote the rich and their lifestyles and stuff. But the space elevator, and that's why the space elevator is being pursued, because it's not in the interest of them. They're afraid that everything that is cool is going to get out of their control, and they don't want that. And so we don't see any movement on any of it. Anything. Whether it's space elevators or whatever. They don't want technology to improve our lives. They only want it to improve their fabulous wealth.
metric ton we send into space. And it's not rainbows and unicorn farts shooting those rockets up there. It's good old-fashioned fossil fuel. So if we're going to get serious about industrializing space, we're going to have to think about a more...
I don't know how true that is. It seems to me like these things run on oxygen and hydrogen. But I suppose it takes fossil fuels to make it. Now, she's on RT America, but she has her own YouTube channel. I saw it this morning, The Resident, that has been putting out videos forever. And, you know, I love her, but she refused to marry me, so I don't like her anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But she is a wonderful, beautiful woman, isn't she?
What's the scariest headline that can be in the news these days?
Okay, so Ruth Bader Ginsburg going into the hospital. The Supreme Court of the United States is a nightmare. Every time I see this guy Roberts, the head of it, and how does he get promoted over her? She was there a lot longer than her, and she's a lot better person. I think it's disgusting. I think we ought to end the Supreme Court of the United States and recreate it with the people in mind. Right now it's just a vehicle for promoting conservative capitalist establishment bullshit, and it needs to go.
I always start with dessert.
Joe Biden teamed up with Keegan-Michael Key for one hell of a ridiculous video. Now, I'm going to play this for you. If you can't stand it, I don't blame you. It's about, what is it, minute 20.
I can't. I love David Dole. You can see him at the Rational National, and if you want to watch, more power to you. It will disgust you, not with him, but with Biden. Biden's a fucking piece of shit.
Floridians are tiptoeing gingerly into a new world. A few days into the phase 1 reopening of most of the state, it's surprisingly quiet.
And, you know, they're banking on summer quashing this virus, and I pray to God that they're right. But almost everything I see them doing is to prop up the rich and put these people in danger. Because these public places, I mean, God, replace them with vending machines or something and give these people an income doing something that's useful other than making your cappuccino in the morning or your latte. This is always been a problem. And these are the only people in the world, people like Mike Papantonio, who actually try and do anything about it, and they have no power. Otherwise, things would have changed a long time ago.
And their Department of Education are being sued again for violating the law by collecting on student loans. These are loans that she's been told that she cannot collect, but that hasn't stopped her. Joining me to talk about this is Farron Cousins, editor of the Trial Lawyer magazine. What's not, what memo isn't she reading? I mean, the law is very clear. I mean, it came under the CARES Act, right?
Right.
The special law called the CARES Act. And the CARES Act said while this pandemic is working its way through what?
All you have to do, Betsy, is just not collect on these defaulted student loan or delinquent student loans. Just don't take them.
Okay, so I know lots of places where you can get your share of Mike Papantonio, and of course here on RT America, and if you look on Ring of Fire, I think he still hosts that with sometimes with Robert F. Kennedy, not sure exactly. Yeah, you can get all this stuff if you put a little effort into looking. I am going to call it a day and hopefully get this video ready, and I'll run it for days on my YouTube channel and advertise it in Progressive News on Facebook. And I strongly suggest you go to Facebook and join the group if you want notifications. I post these things constantly to my friends. I'm running out of room in my friends list, so you may have a hard time getting on that friends list. But I do plan on our members list and my friends, you know, people who are friends to me personally. Actually, there's plenty of room in the group, so you can join the group anytime. As far as being my friend, you know, for now it's okay, but it'll probably fill up eventually. I'm at like 4,500 or something, and it caps off at 5,000. So, you know, I think I'll end the show today with one of my videos. And I'll do this one. So for Progressive News, hope you have a nice weekend. I believe I said it was Friday. So have a nice weekend. Going out of business, huh?
Yeah.
Get some video before they close.
What you need today, sir?
Just thought I'd get some video before the place closes.
All right, go right, do what you like.
Where's Scott at?
Scott, he's a good-looking guy right there.
Can you make the train go around one time for me? For my video? Get your... Thanks. Appreciate it. So what are you going to do?
No hungry.
Oh, yeah? Going to be looking for...
On the soup line. We usually line up about 11, so I'll probably get for about 10:30.
I know you really are some silly dream.